The air inside the Kapoor family conference room felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves sensed the tension simmering beneath the polished surface of the giant wooden table. Arav sat at the far end, his usual spot, quiet, observant, and easily overlooked. The others filled the room with loud voices, rustling papers, and the clatter of complaints about falling profits. They spoke of suppliers pulling out, machinery overdue for repair, and clients threatening to walk away. Each voice rose like a desperate plea for survival. Arav stayed silent. He had learned early that silence was safer. For years he had tried to blend into this family, to earn a place in their circle. Not because he sought power or wealth, but because he longed for belonging. After his parents died in a late-night road accident, Aunt Mira had taken him in. To everyone else, she was a benevolent aunt giving shelter to an orphan nephew. To Arav, she was the only guardian he had left. And though she never let him forget it, he accepted her sharpness as a form of love. But today, sitting in that room filled with bickering voices and fading pride, he wondered if he had mistaken tolerance for affection all along. The business was drowning. Everyone knew it, even if they pretended otherwise. Loans had piled up. The market was shifting. And the cousins, pampered, entitled, blissfully unaware, kept spending, as if success were an inherited trait rather than something earned. Finally, when the noise became too much, Arav cleared his throat softly. If it would help, I can lend some money, at least enough to keep operations stable for a few months. The room fell silent for the first time all morning. Aunt Mira's eyes gleamed with relief, too bright, too eager. His cousins exchanged glances that were far less grateful and far more calculating. How much? One of them asked, as if shopping at a bargain sale. Everything I have, Arav replied, his voice barely louder than the hum of the air conditioner. It won't solve everything, but it'll buy time. They accepted instantly. No hesitation, no gratitude, just entitlement. Arav told himself it didn't matter. Helping them meant helping the company, the only piece of his parents he had left. He thought naively that this sacrifice would make him part of something. Weeks passed, the money stabilized the business. Suppliers returned, clients renewed contracts, the family walked around with their chests puffed out, boasting about their smart decisions. No one mentioned Arav's contribution. No one even asked how he was managing after emptying his savings, but he was used to being invisible. It was on a humid afternoon during yet another family meeting that everything changed. They were discussing long-term plans, succession, ownership, inheritance. Arav listened quietly, taking notes like he always did, when he finally gathered the courage to ask the simplest question. What about the repayment of the loan? Should we set a schedule? His words floated into the air soft, harmless, yet the reaction was immediate. Aunt Mira stopped writing. Slowly, deliberately, she looked up. Her expression hardened in a way he had never seen before. Arav, she said, voice cutting like a blade wrapped in silk, inheritance and decisions about the business are only for real family. You're not quite in that circle. His heart stuttered. Not quite in that circle. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, but no one defended him. No one contradicted her. Aunt Mira continued, as for the loan, don't embarrass yourself. Family helps each other. You don't need repayment. The words struck harder than any violence could. And in that moment, the illusion shattered completely. He was not family. He was a convenient resource. And the realization settled inside him like a seed, quiet, cold, and waiting. Arav didn't sleep the night after Aunt Mira's declaration. Her words replayed endlessly in his mind, each repetition carving a deeper crack within him. Not real family. Don't embarrass yourself. You don't need repayment. He had always known he wasn't the favorite, but he never imagined they would dismiss something as significant as his entire life savings as if it were pocket change. He had never expected gratitude, but he had hoped for at least a fragment of acknowledgement, a nod, a thank you. Some sign that they understood what he had sacrificed. Instead, they had brushed him aside like an employee asking for a day off. By morning, his chest felt hollow. Yerp. Pain had a strange way of sharpening things. He walked into the office, as he always did, quiet, polite, invisible, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer looked at them like family. He looked at them like what they were, people who would take anything from him as long as he didn't refuse. He began observing them with new clarity. His eldest cousin, Rishi, spoke loudly in meetings, but couldn't write a single email without grammatical chaos. Mira Auntie made decisions based on pride, not logic. The younger cousins were too distracted with their social lives to understand what operations even meant. The fact that this business had survived as long as it had was a miracle, or perhaps a result of his unseen effort. He had been the one who handled client crises quietly. He had been the one suppliers trusted. He had been the one who kept track of the company's financials when everyone else ignored them. Arav realized something almost funny. While trying so hard to prove he belonged, he had slowly become the backbone of the entire business. And not a single one of them had noticed. They believed they controlled him. They didn't see he held the reins. The loan he gave wasn't just cash, it was credit lines built through years of relationships, promises he personally vouched for, and arrangements that suppliers agreed to only because he asked. Without his goodwill, the business had no legs, so he began quietly reclaiming his power, not with open confrontation, but with silent preparation. He documented everything, every meeting where they mentioned the loan, every transaction that involved his money, every email where he was asked politely or otherwise to handle the crisis. He created a trail so flawless, so undeniable, that even the coldest judge wouldn't ignore it. He didn't do it out of revenge, at least not yet. He did it because he finally understood the truth. He could no longer trust them. Meanwhile, they continued to treat him like a servant disguised as a relative. Arav, call the supplier. Arav, fix the accounts. Arav, come to the meeting early and set everything up. Don't question decisions, just do as you're told. And he did, quietly, calmly, efficiently, but inside, he began setting boundaries. He stopped joining them for lunch. He stopped staying late unless absolutely necessary. He stopped accepting their fake smiles and half-hearted pats on the back. Most importantly, he stopped hoping they would see him as family. Aunt Mira noticed the change, but misinterpreted it entirely. Good, she said once, passing by his desk. You should focus more on working and less on expectations. Arav only nodded. He focused, yes, but not on the work she imagined. He focused on the ticking clock, on the loan deadline approaching sooner than they realized, on the fragile system that depended entirely on him, unaware of how quickly it could crumble without his support. He was not planning revenge. He was simply preparing for what would happen when they refused to repay him. Silently, patiently, unseen, just as they had taught him, the deadline for the loan repayment approached quietly, almost hidden beneath the noise of daily operations. No one in the Kapoor family spoke about it. No one planned for it. No one even acknowledged that a debt existed. It was as if the moment Aunt Mira had dismissed Arav's request, they had collectively erased the loan from their memory. But Arav hadn't. For months, he had watched the company lean more and more heavily on the network he had built. Suppliers who trusted only his voice, clients who returned because he negotiated, a fragile stability maintained by invisible strings only he controlled. He gave them every chance to do the right thing. A polite reminder email on the loan's maturity date, a follow-up message a week later, a gentle knock on Aunt Mira's office door the next day. Each response was the same: avoidance, irritation, dismissal. Finally, at a quarterly board meeting, Arav once again brought it up, not out of desperation, but formality. I would like to discuss the repayment schedule, he said calmly, opening a folder. As per the agreement, there is no agreement. Rishi cut in, rolling his eyes. It was just family help. Stop making it dramatic. The room murmured in agreement. Aunt Mira leaned back, folding her arms. Arav, we are not refusing you. We're simply saying it's inappropriate to demand repayment right now. The money was given out of love, why make it transactional? Arav met her gaze steadily. Because it was a transaction, and I gave everything I had. A flicker of irritation crossed her eyes. Lower your tone. You forget your place sometimes. Yes, he had forgotten that to them. He would always be less. He closed the folder slowly, understood. The cousins smirked. They thought the discussion was over. They didn't know it had just begun. 2 days later, Arav initiated the first step. Formal demand letters sent to the board, drafted with quiet precision. When the family ignored them, He activated the second step, retracting the credit he had extended through his personal guarantees. The effect was immediate. Suppliers, alarmed by the sudden freeze, halted deliveries. Orders were paused. Production lines stuttered to a stop. Machinery that had been running on borrowed time went quiet. Confusion erupted like a storm. Why are the suppliers refusing? Why are shipments delayed? Why aren't they taking my calls? Arav watched the chaos with an unsettling calm. He didn't hide, yet he didn't volunteer explanations either. He simply waited until Aunt Mira, for the first time in months, came to his office. Her voice trembled. What is going on? Why is everything shutting down? Arav looked at her, emotionless. Because all our suppliers are owed money through my credit lines. I have paused them until my loan is repaid. You what? She whispered, horrified. He irresponsible because it is repeted, it etaniatai with G and TLY, as if explaining a simple rule to a stubborn child. My money kept this business alive. Without it, every agreement collapses. The realization hit her like a blow. This wasn't just a loan. This was the foundation holding their world together. The cousins barged in moments later, faces burning with panic. You're destroying us. One shouted, How can you do this? Another cried. Arav closed his laptop calmly. I'm not destroying anything. I'm collecting what I'm owed. But we're family, Rishi yelled, voice cracking. Arav raised an eyebrow. Funny, that's not what I was told. Silence drenched the room. The echo of Aunt Mira's own words filled the air like poison they had swallowed themselves. The auction hall smelled faintly of old wood and fresh despair, an oddly fitting scent for the occasion. Rows of chairs filled slowly with bidders, bankers, and curious spectators who had come to watch the fall of what was once one of the region's most respected family enterprises. Kapoor Textiles, the business that had survived 3 generations, stood on the edge of being sold piece by piece. Arav arrived quietly, unnoticed at first, slipping into a seat near the back. His posture was calm, composed. On the inside, he felt nothing, not anger, not triumph, not even relief, only a cool stillness, as if he had crossed a bridge and the flames behind him no longer mattered. At the front sat Aunt Mira, her face drained of color. The cousins huddled around her, whispering anxiously. Their arrogance was gone. Their pride melted the moment creditors marched through their doors and suppliers demanded immediate dues. Without Arav's financial shield, they had discovered how frail their empire really was. When they finally noticed him in the back row, a ripple of shock passed through the group. Rishi's mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to speak but couldn't. Arav simply nodded once, neither cold nor warm, just acknowledging. The auction began. Machines, furniture, property rights, logistics vehicles. Even the company's name was up for bidding. One by one, items were called out and bids flew rapidly around the room. Arav listened quietly, raising his hand at key moments, always with precision. It didn't take long for whispers to spread. That young man, who is he? He's bidding on everything. Must be a wealthy investor. No one knew the truth, that he was simply reclaiming what had always been his responsibility, his burden, and in a strange way, his destiny. When the final item, the company's name and core assets, was announced, the room held its breath. Banks wanted it. Competitors wanted it. Even a foreign investor placed a claim. The bidding escalated quickly. Arav waited, and then, in a pause heavy enough to bend time, he raised his number. The hall froze. His bid was clean, strong, final. A moment later, the auctioneer's hammer struck the podium with a sharp, echoing crack. Sold. Aunt Mira gasped softly. One cousin covered his face with his hands. Another stared at Arav, as if seeing him for the first time. He walked toward them slowly. No guards, no entourage. Just the same quiet step he had walked with through their home as a teenager, except now he walked with the strength they had never seen. Aunt Mira stood up, her voice trembling. Arav Beta, you bought it? Yes, he said gently. But why? Her eyes filled with tears, of shame, of regret, of desperation. Why would you save the business after everything? He held her gaze, soft but unyielding. I didn't save it, he said. I simply took responsibility for what you all abandoned. Rishi stepped forward, guilt shadowing his face. So what happens to us now? Arav paused. He could have crushed them. He could have thrown them out the way they had emotionally thrown him out years ago. He could have tasted the sweetest revenge by watching them suffer, but standing before them, he realized something important. He didn't need their collapse to validate his worth. Nothing dramatic happens, he finally said. If you want to work here, you can. Not as owners, those days are over, but as employees with dignity. They stared at him in disbelief. You're giving us a place, one cousin whispered. Yes, he said softly, the same way I once thought you gave me a place. Aunt Mira collapsed into a chair, covering her face. Regret rolled off her in waves. I was wrong, she whispered, so wrong. Arav didn't reply, not with words. He simply extended a small, polite smile, just enough to show he held no hatred, but not enough to invite closeness again. As he walked away, he felt lighter, freer. The hollow place inside him was no longer filled by pain or longing. It was filled by truth. They had pushed him aside as not real family, but he had become the only person who kept the family alive. And now he didn't need their acceptance. He had built his own place, strong, steady, and finally, unquestionably his.